This Thumbtack Dragon Egg tutorial is for the absolute beginner. It's also a fun supervised project for kids. It is the most basic of my Thumbtack Egg series tutorials with step-by-step instructions, and it explains everything that I've learned making over 45 different Thumbtack eggs and watching over 20 YouTube videos and testing and research of different mediums. So having done all of this work for you guys, I set out to make the most simple, user-friendly tutorials, and with this tutorial as a base you can always refer back to it if you need to refresh the fundamentals. Hi, I'm Mel, the sculptor and artist from Two Feathers Gallery. So happy and excited that you're here today with me for this video. It would be so amazing if you could please subscribe to my channel. So please subscribe now if you haven't already. Let's jump in right now. To start your egg, you can decide whether you want to jump right in and just start sticking in those thumbtacks, and that would make your egg 100% non-toxic. Or you could also choose to apply a few coats of acrylic paint in a matching colour to whatever colour pins that you would like to use. So you might be asking, so why the paint, Mel? Well, the paint is really amazing at filling in any little white polystyrene gaps between the thumbtacks. So what I'm going to do in a second is I'm zooming into the first gold egg that I ever made that had a bit more gaps than usual because I was just learning, and no matter how good I got at putting in those tacks, you'll find that they'll still show through a little, and they're very hard to see, and mostly when the egg is upside down. But if you're a perfectionist like me, you may want to put down an acrylic paint base. Please skip ahead to stick in the thumbtacks if you like, or stick around if you want to do the painting, as I'm demonstrating a silver Thumbtack egg in this tutorial, and I'm going to use a mixture of the Jo Sonja Carbon Black and Titanium White acrylic paint to get a light grey colour, or more of a darkish, medium to darkish grey colour, and any brand of acrylic paint will do. And please, just an important note, not to use any metallic paint because it will eat away at the polystyrene. And if you're going to do, for instance, a gold egg, I would do a base layer of yellow ochre. It doesn't have to be exact, and generally a shade or two darker than the colour of your tacks, so it blends in and looks like the natural shadows underneath. Here you can see that I'm matching the colour paint really roughly to the colour of the pin. Use some foam to put on a very dry application of the paint, and just gently dab on a very small amount and wipe it over the egg, seeing how far that you can stretch it out, and avoid making it too wet or blobby. So we don't want to saturate the polystyrene and make it all blobby and globby. It dries really quickly, and you can apply as many layers as you like. I go for about 2 to 3 layers until it's opaque. 2 layers is usually sufficient, and yeah, so that's how the first layer looked. I'm doing the second layer now, and you can apply a bit more pressure, pushing it into the cracks and crevices. However, most of them won't even show up anyway because it's going to be covered by the pins, so it's not too much of an issue. For this project, we'll be using thumbtacks, otherwise known as drawing pins. I have 150 here, however I'll tell you exactly how many I used at the end of the video. You can start sticking your pins in either at the bottom or at the top of the egg. So personally, I love starting at the bottom and working my way up to the top, and there are 3 reasons for that. So firstly, the egg can stand on its own without a stand, and also I find it easier to finish sticking in the last of the pins at the top, and I really love the pattern that it makes on the bottom of the egg. So take any marker or pen you have lying around and eyeball the center of the egg and mark a dot in the middle of it. If you start at the top of some eggs, you will find a little indentation as a guideline if you like. However, as I said, I like working from the bottom. And you can also just stick in a pin and turn it around to get it centered. However, if you do this too many times, it can kind of mash up the polystyrene a bit and it loses a bit of its strength and its grip. And I like to work on my egg in a glass. I just find it really nice and easy. And also, yeah, at the moment your egg is as light as a feather. However, it's a magical process where it transforms with just some humble thumbtacks and polystyrene into a heavier and precious object of beauty. Now I'm going to get into the nitty-gritty of how much to overlap your pins, so taking into account that the more you overlap, the more pins you will need. So you might want to get a little bit thrifty and save some money and time painting all those pins by overlapping them as little as possible. And my general rule of thumb is to overlap by about a quarter. So you can see that I've divided this little tack here into quarters with some lines, and you can see that I've coloured in a quarter of it with a blue marker, so you can see exactly how much I'm planning to overlap. And it's really good to do this just to keep the pins quite consistent around your egg. In a moment, we'll be creating a flower around the pin, which is the first step. To demonstrate the overlapping, I don't go all the way up to the edge of the pin. I like to leave a little bit of breathing space. Let's overlap it by about a quarter. You may have to kind of pull it in and out a few times just to get a feel for it. And that's good. That's a good overlap as it's roughly a quarter of the pin, and that's what we're aiming for. Woo! For the third tack, you can see I've coloured in a quarter on this edge and a quarter on the other edge. We won't put the tack right up into this corner here. Instead, we'll just concentrate on overlapping a quarter on this edge and a quarter on the other edge. And that's what I marked in blue on the tack. So now it's popped in and you can see it's about a quarter on either side. It just needs to be overlapped enough so that the previous pins don't fall out. That's why we have this whole kind of overlapping system. It doesn't matter if they're not perfect, if they're a little bit uneven, and no matter how much you overlap those pins, it's going to look fantastic. As you might have noticed, we're just about to finish the flower shape. And that's the first step, and well done if you've made it this far. And you can see that the middle of the pin, it's well centered and the pins are evenly spaced, and that's going to be great because that's how it will stand up really well on a flat surface. Step 1 is done, and moving on for the second row. Just as before, we leave a bit of a breathing space for the tack and overlap it by a quarter. So it's not right up in that corner there, it's just a little bit back. And see that there. And you can see the second step here is to make a circle around the flower shape and continue to overlap like we did before as we go around. And just try to cover up the gaps as you go by how you overlap the pins. You can see with this pin here, there's going to be a little bit of a gap, and it's just a little bit unavoidable, even though it's a tiny little gap. And you can see that if it wasn't painted grey, that the white polystyrene underneath would show a little bit, would be a little bit more noticeable. And let's just continue our way around. Second row has been done. So that's looking great, and you might decide to see if your little egg can sit up on its own at this stage, which is lots of fun because you can always play with it as well and just have a little bit of fun with it there. And the fact that it actually can stand up on its own means that you don't have to worry about finding any kind of egg stand. You can pop it straight on the mantelpiece or wherever you would like to display your beautiful egg. And we're just going to continue all the way around the rest of the egg. So keep overlapping, keep that general rule of thumb of overlapping by a quarter, and keep on cruising. This is a 78mm polystyrene egg, and the amount of thumbtacks needed will vary greatly. So I can tell you that you could use anywhere from 160 to 240 thumbtacks per egg, and it just depends on how much you overlap the pins. And it's a good idea to allow for more tacks for each egg rather than less, so that you don't run out. And I'll let you know exactly how many tacks I used for this 78mm egg in just a moment. On the right hand side, I'm showing you some polymer clay egg stands, which will be future tutorials. If you're interested in learning how to make these, please let me know in the comments section. And there is an easy kids 5-minute version up to really detailed elaborate versions as well. The egg stands come free with the dragon eggs in my Etsy shop if you're interested in purchasing them. We've made it to the top of the egg. Sometimes it can be a little bit confusing about what to do at the top, so I'm going to show you in just a moment. So we're just finishing off these last little tacks here. It's looking good. I hope your little egg's coming along really well too. And so that looks pretty good. However, you can see that if I pop the last tack down, there'll be a lot of gaps around it. So when that happens, you can actually pop 2 or 3 tacks there instead of having one smack bang in the center. You can really see the gaps around there. It's going to be different every time because the overlaps will always be different. And so what I'm going to do to solve that is to put in 3 pins instead into the top. You may need to shuffle them around a little bit until you're happy with them. So just shuffle them around, put them in until you feel happy, until they feel like they're, you know, nice and in line with the rest of the egg. You can pull them in and out, and I'm happy with that. I think that looks great. And also it's really important on the last tack, you can also choose to apply some super glue if you like. And what that does is it locks in all of the tacks and makes it really, really strong. So it's always a great idea to do that. You don't have to. this is what it looks like. And I'm going to give you a little close-up of all the little gaps that they were filled up with the grey paint. That's looking good. I've loved having you join me for this tutorial, and I'll see you in the next one.